They didn't think that the show was going to go anywhere. But Sunshine Sammy would be the leader of this gang. And so our gang first aired as a silent short in the year 1922.
Do you remember those kids who were always getting into trouble? The ones with messy clothes? And the kind of laughter that just felt real? They made everything seem simple, fun, and a little chaotic in the best way. For a long time, that's all anyone saw. But what most people don't talk about is what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. It's strange when you think about it, how a group that brought so much joy to millions could end up with stories that feel so heavy, so complicated, and didn't turn out the way anyone expected. So what really happened to the cast of the Little Rascals? Today, we're uncovering the shocking, heartbreaking truth behind the smiles you thought you knew. The birth of our gang, 1922's original silent-era kids. Most people think the Little Rascals just appeared out of nowhere, like it was always meant to be fun, chaotic, and full of laughter. But the truth is, it started as a bold risk. And then, that risk became something much bigger than anyone expected. Back in 1922, Hal Roach wanted to do something different. Movies at the time didn't really capture what childhood felt like. Everything was too polished, too controlled. Children on screen didn't act like real children, and audiences were starting to feel that disconnect. So instead of following the usual path, he decided to take a risk. He went out and found real kids from ordinary neighborhoods. No acting lessons, just natural personalities. And then he put them in front of the camera to simply be themselves. That decision changed everything. The first group of kids he brought together had a kind of chemistry you couldn't plan. Mickey Daniels quickly stood out. With his freckles and restless energy, he became the natural leader without even trying. He didn't feel like he was acting. And that's exactly why people connected with him. Right next to him was Mary Kornman, who brought a softer, more grounded presence. She had that calm charm, but she wasn't just there to stand back. She joined in, kept up, and made every scene feel balanced. Joe Cobb added another layer to the group. Friendly, easygoing, and instantly likable. His expressions alone could make people smile. He felt familiar, like someone you already knew. Then there was Jackie Condon, who often came across as the more proper kid. But no matter how neat or put together he seemed, he always ended up right in the middle of the same chaos as everyone else. And then there was a moment that quietly made history. Ernie Morrison, known as Sunshine Sammy, stepped into the spotlight. At a time when segregation was deeply rooted in everyday life, seeing a black child on screen alongside white kids, laughing and playing as equals, wasn't something people were used to. It wasn't loud or announced, but it was powerful in a way that reached far beyond entertainment. Right beside him was Alan Hoskins, also known as Farina, full of personality, playful, and always bringing something unexpected. Whether he was causing trouble or just reacting in his own unique way, he became impossible to ignore. And then, before long, he turned into one of the biggest stars in the entire series, appearing in over 100 shorts and becoming a familiar face to audiences everywhere. What made our gang stand out wasn't just the cast, it was how real everything felt. These kids weren't trying to be perfect. They argued, laughed too hard, made mistakes, and turned everyday situations into something entertaining without even trying. That honesty pulled people in. It made audiences feel like they were watching real childhood, not something scripted. In silent shorts like One Terrible Day and The Champagne, they didn't need dialogue to tell a story. Their actions said everything. The way they moved, the way they reacted, the way they interacted with each other, it all felt natural. And then audiences started to connect, not just casually, but deeply. People didn't just watch these kids, they cared about them. And then the success came quickly, almost faster than anyone expected. These children, who had started out just playing in front of a camera, became known across America. Their faces were recognized. Their personalities stood out. People followed their appearances and waited for the next short film to come out. And for the kids themselves, life started to shift. They were earning steady pay, helping their families financially, and experiencing a level of attention that most children could never imagine. For a while, it felt like everything was moving in the right direction. The excitement, the recognition, the opportunities, it all seemed like a dream. Traveling, filming, and being part of something successful made for a different kind of childhood, one that came with both fun and responsibility. Even beyond the entertainment, our gang was doing something important without making a big statement about it. During a time when the country was still deeply divided by race, the series showed black and white children interacting as equals, playing together, arguing, laughing, and solving problems side by side. It wasn't presented as something unusual. It was just there, naturally woven into the stories. And that made it even more impactful. Ernie Morrison had already appeared alongside major stars like Harold Lloyd before joining the group, making him one of the earliest black child stars in Hollywood. And Alan Hoskins continued to grow in popularity, becoming one of the most recognized faces in the series. Joe Cobb, with his warm and friendly presence, became what many people remember as the original fat kid of the group, setting a pattern that would continue with later cast members. And Mickey Daniels, with his charm and energy, even became something of a silent era favorite among young fans. For a few years, everything seemed to align perfectly. The show was growing. The kids were becoming stars. The audience kept coming back. And from the outside, it looked like a perfect story. Because even while the laughter stayed the same and the cameras kept rolling, this was only the beginning of a journey that would take a very different turn later on. Mickey Daniels and Mary Kornman. They were the kids everyone remembered, the ones who seemed to make our gang come alive. Mickey Daniels, the freckled, mischievous boy, was the heart of it all. From 1992 to 1926, he appeared in dozens of silent shorts. Every time he ran across the screen, shouted, tumbled, or laughed, audiences couldn't look away. He had this energy that was impossible to copy. He didn't just act, he was the chaos, the fun, the trouble. People loved him for it. Kids wanted to be like him. Adults couldn't stop watching. And then there was Mary Kornman. Mary was very different. She was calm, sweet, and graceful. People called her the pretty girl of the gang, but that wasn't all. She had this quiet confidence that made her stand out, even when the boys were making a mess of everything. She appeared in over 40 shorts and stayed a steady presence while chaos swirled all around her. Put her next to Mickey, and the magic really happened. He was energy. She was calm. Together, they balanced each other, and audiences loved watching it. As kids, their lives seemed almost too perfect. Fame came early, and it came fast. They were recognized wherever they went, paid for doing what they loved, traveling, filming, living a life most kids could only dream of. The world watched them grow up. The laughter was endless. The energy never faded. But underneath all that fun and joy, life was quietly changing. Silent films gave way to talkies. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to just run, tumble, or smile. You had to speak, to deliver lines, to have the kind of voice that could hold attention in a whole new way. Mickey tried. He really did. But the world had moved on, and the bright, freckled boy everyone loved wasn't in demand anymore. Roles were rare. The camera, once his best friend, became a stranger. And with that change came struggle. Mickey's energy dimmed. The boy who had been adored by millions was left trying to find himself in a world that had forgotten him. He turned to alcohol, trying to fill the emptiness that fame had once filled. The life that had once felt like a dream became quiet and lonely. In 1970, Mickey Daniels passed away at 55. He was found dead in a cheap hotel room, days after he had quietly slipped away.
Daniels became a chronic alcoholic and was found dead on August 20, 1970, in a transient hotel in San Diego. His death was attributed to cirrhosis.
It's hard to imagine that the same boy who once ran, shouted, and laughed for audiences across the country ended his life alone and unnoticed. Mary's journey was different, but not easy. After leaving our gang, she tried acting in the Boy Friends series, working with other former rascals. For a time, it looked like she might continue her career. But eventually, she chose a quieter life. She married, stepped away from Hollywood, and focused on her own world. Fame no longer followed her. but the peace of privacy came at a cost. Later, she faced cancer, and in 1973, she passed away at 57. Their stories are striking because of the contrast. Mickey and Mary had it all as kids: fame, recognition, love from millions. They were adored, and then, as adults, the spotlight moved on. The cheers faded. They were left to navigate adulthood without guidance or support. The world had loved them for their childhood magic, but it didn't prepare them for life after it ended. What makes it even more human is that their struggles weren't because they weren't talented or loved. They were. Mickey was funny, brave, and electric. Mary was graceful, smart, and charming. They gave everything they had to entertain people. But childhood fame doesn't always come with a safety net. Growing up after being adored is hard. The world keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. Even now, when people watch those old Our Gang shorts, it's easy to smile at Mickey's antics or Mary's calm poise. But if you look closer, there's a bittersweet truth. These kids who brought so much joy, who made people laugh for decades, faced a reality that wasn't in any script. Life after the camera, after the laughter, wasn't easy. And that makes their story unforgettable. And that's the truth. The laughter we remember, only half the story. The lives they lived after, that's where the real story begins. Joe Cobb, Jackie Condon, and Ernie Morrison. Joe Cobb, Jackie Condon, and Ernie "Sunshine" Sammy Morrison. Three names that helped build one of the most iconic children's series in Hollywood history. Yet their stories are often forgotten. Joe Cobb, with his round face and cheerful demeanor, was the original chubby everyman of Our Gang. He wasn't flashy or mischievous like Mickey, nor delicate and poised like Mary. He was simply Joe, a kid you could relate to, the kind you'd see next door, the friend everyone wanted on their team. Joe appeared in an incredible 86 episodes, making him one of the most consistent faces of the silent shorts. Kids and adults alike loved him. His jolly smile, his round cheeks, and his honest reactions made the antics of Our Gang feel real. He wasn't acting, he was being Joe, and audiences connected with that. But as silent films gave way to sound, Joe's story, like so many others, began to change. He left the series and stepped into the real world, away from cameras and applause. Instead of Hollywood glitz, he worked ordinary jobs, factory work and everyday labor that offered stability but little recognition. Fame had been a bright, flashing light, and then it quietly dimmed. For Joe, life went on in a modest, uncelebrated way. He lived a long life, passing away in 2002 at the age of 85. That's remarkable longevity, especially for someone who had experienced the dizzying heights of childhood fame. But Joe's life also reminds us how fleeting a celebrity can be, and how a beloved child star can quietly fade into the background of history, remembered only by old fans and rare archival footage. Then there was Jackie Condon, the rich kid of the original gang. From the very first short, Jackie carried a different kind of charm. He was the polished, confident one, the boy who could seem a little more grown up, even when playing a kid. He brought a balance to the group, showing that Our Gang wasn't just chaos. It had structure, personality, and layers. Jackie stayed with the series for several years, appearing in dozens of episodes. But like all the silent-era children, time caught up. As he grew older, the magic that made him perfect for the Little Rascal image slowly disappeared. He faced the harsh reality of life after childhood fame, battling illness and eventually cancer. Jackie passed away in 1977 at the age of 59, leaving behind memories of laughter, mischief, and the innocence of the early Our Gang days. His life, like Joe's, illustrates a stark truth. Growing up after early fame often comes with struggle, loss, and fading attention. Perhaps the most groundbreaking of the three was Ernie "Sunshine" and Sammy Morrison. He wasn't just another face in the gang, he was a pioneer. In a time when Hollywood was deeply segregated, Sunshine Sammy became the first major black child star in a nationally recognized series. He brought charm, energy, and humor that transcended the limitations imposed by the era. In early shorts, he ran, tumbled, and laughed alongside his white peers, offering audiences a glimpse of equality on screen, something revolutionary during the height of Jim Crow laws. For children watching, He was more than a character. He was proof that talent could shine regardless of color. Sunshine Sammy's career, however, was not without hardship. He left our gang for better-paying opportunities, recognizing his value in a world that often underpaid black performers compared to their white counterparts. Though he continued acting and performing in other films, he never received the full recognition, accolades, or residuals that others sometimes enjoyed. He lived to 76, passing away in 1989 from cancer. His life reflects both triumph and injustice. A trailblazer whose legacy opened doors for future black performers, but whose personal story remained quieter than his on-screen presence. Together, Joe, Jackie, and Sunshine Sammy were the foundation of what our gang would become. They brought a human, playful, and groundbreaking energy to the screen. They were not just actors. They were children living in front of a camera, influencing a generation, breaking barriers, and creating laughter that still resonates today. And yet, despite their contributions, time moved on. The bright spotlight that shone on them as children faded, leaving them to navigate adult life without the fame or financial security their early work deserved. Their stories are a mix of joy and quiet sadness. Joe found longevity, but lived simply and without fanfare. Jackie battled illness and left the world too soon, remembered by only a few. Sunshine Sammy opened doors for future generations, but had to fight for recognition and fair compensation. All three remind us that being a child star isn't just fun and games. It's fleeting, and the real world waits when the cameras stop rolling. Norman Chubby Chaney. Norman Chubby Chaney's story is one of the most heartbreaking in all of our gang. He wasn't just a kid on screen. He was a boy who carried the weight of a role that demanded more than any child should ever bear. And then, he became famous almost overnight. Replacing Joe Cobb in 1929, Chubby stepped into the shoes of a beloved character. Audiences loved him instantly. He was big, sure, but he was also full of energy, charm, and a kind of innocence that made people smile. At just 3 feet 11 inches and over 110 pounds, Chubby was bigger than most kids his age. And that size, well, it made him perfect for the role of the portly rascal. But there was more to it than laughs. Chubby had a glandular condition. His weight wasn't just a quirk, it was a real health struggle. Yet, on screen, it became part of his magic. He made audiences laugh without ever realizing the price he was paying behind the camera. Chubby starred in 18 shorts for our gang, and in each one, he gave everything he had. He fell, he stumbled, he got into trouble, and people loved it. But as he grew older, the pressures started to show. By the time he left the series around age 14, his weight had ballooned to nearly 300 pounds. And then, the real problems began. In 1935, hoping to reclaim his health, Chubby underwent risky surgery at Johns Hopkins. He lost a huge amount of weight, dropping down to just 136 pounds. But his body had been through so much. The strain on his heart and organs was immense. And then, on May 29, 1936, Norman Chaney died. He was only 21 years old. Myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart, took him. He became the first former rascal to pass away. The tragedy didn't stop there. His family couldn't afford a headstone. For 76 long years, his grave in Baltimore Cemetery remained unmarked.
He was the first kid to die from the Our Gang show. The family was very poor. They couldn't afford the gravestone for Norman.
Imagine that. A boy who had made millions laugh. A boy whose smile and energy lit up the screen. And yet, no recognition. Just silence. It wasn't until 2012 that fans finally stepped in. They raised money to give Norman Chaney the headstone he deserved, alongside his mother's. At last, the world could honor him properly. But it was bittersweet. That grave marker didn't erase the years of neglect or the fact that fame, once bright and shining, had faded so quickly. Chubby's story is painful because it shows the hidden side of child stardom. On screen, everything looked perfect. The laughter, the adventures, the cheers. But behind the camera, it was hard, very hard. Fame came fast, and then it could disappear just as fast. His body, his health, even his life were all affected by what the world once loved to watch. Even with all that tragedy, Chubby's presence on screen is unforgettable. When you watch old Our Gang shorts, you can still see that energy, that charm, that unique spark that made him special. He wasn't just a funny character. He was a pioneer in his own way. He showed how a child's personality could shine through and bring joy to millions, even when life off-screen was cruel and demanding. Chubby's life was short, painful, but also remarkable. He made people laugh. He made people care. And thanks to the fans who finally honored him, his name will never be forgotten. The boy who once carried the weight of laughter now carries a place in history. A boy whose life was fleeting, but whose impact endures. The sound era icons. As the silent era faded, a new generation of rascals stepped into the spotlight. And this time, you could hear them. Their voices, their quirks, their laughs, everything felt alive. These were the stars who defined Our Gang in the sound era. Alfalfa, Spanky, Stymie, Buckwheat, and Darla. Each one is unforgettable. Each one with a story that wasn't always happy. Carl Alfalfa Switzer was the kid everyone remembered first. That crooked cowlick, that off-key singing. He could steal a scene without even trying. He joined in 1935 and instantly became a fan favorite. Kids copied him. Adults laughed at him. He had that perfect mix of awkward and charming. But as much as we loved him on screen, life off camera was much harder. Alfalfa was typecast. People didn't see Carl, they only saw Alfalfa. And when you're stuck in a role that young, escaping it isn't easy. As an adult, Carl tried to make it work. He became a dog breeder. He guided hunting trips. But the shadow of Alfalfa followed him everywhere. And then tragedy struck. 1959. He was just 31. An argument over $50 and a lost hunting dog ended with Carl being shot, dead. The man who killed him claimed self-defense, saying Alfalfa pulled a knife. The jury agreed, ruling it justifiable homicide. Fans were shocked. And from that moment, whispers of a curse began to follow the gang. Then there was George Spanky McFarland, the chubby leader with the slow, mischievous grin. Spanky appeared in over 90 shorts, and even after the gang, he hosted a children's TV show. But fame left its mark. He struggled with weight, struggled with expectations, and struggled to live up to the kid the world always remembered. He died of a heart attack in 1993 at 64, still carrying the image that had defined his life. Matthew Stymie Beard was another star who broke barriers. The clever kid with the derby hat and sharp comebacks, Stymie became one of the first black child stars in Hollywood. That was huge. In the 1930s, that wasn't just entertainment. That was progress. But life off-screen wasn't fair. Stymie faced racism, addiction, and legal problems. He battled more than just the camera. He passed away in 1981 at 56 from pneumonia after a stroke and fall. It's a harsh reminder that childhood fame often came with lifelong struggles. Billy Buckwheat Thomas was the little toddler everyone adored. He tumbled, tripped, and got into all kinds of mischief. Everyone loved him. But growing up in the spotlight didn't protect him from life's challenges. Buckwheat died in 1980 at just 49 from a heart attack. Fans remembered the cute, lovable kid, but the man behind the character faced battles the cameras never showed. And then there was Darla Hood, the sweet, shining leading lady. Her smile lit up every scene. She wanted more than just the gang, so she chased a career in singing, but her body couldn't keep up with her dreams. She passed away tragically young in 1979 at only 47 from heart failure after complications from hepatitis caught during a blood transfusion. Her story is a reminder that fame doesn't guarantee safety, health, or a long life. These sound era stars weren't just performers. They were pioneers. They made the series bigger, brighter, and unforgettable. Alfalfa's goofy energy, Spanky's clever mischief, Stymie's charm and trailblazing presence, Buckwheat's lovable innocence, Darla's shining smile. Together, they defined a generation of childhood memories. The sound era rascals brought our gang to new heights. They gave us laughter, joy, and unforgettable moments. But their stories remind us that behind every smile, every laugh, there's a human being with hopes, struggles, and a life far more complicated than any short film could ever show. And that is why their stories still resonate today. Froggy, Weezer, and Jackie Cooper's trauma. Some of the shortest lives in our gang history are also some of the most heartbreaking. You remember that raspy little voice that could make any scene instantly funnier? That was Froggy. But life off camera was fragile. In 1948, just 16 years old, he was riding his scooter while delivering newspapers, and a truck hit him. Gone, just like that. The world had loved him as a rascal, and then he was gone. No one could have predicted such a sudden, tragic end for the kid who made everyone laugh with just a croak. Bobby Weezer Hutchins had his own brush with fate. Weezer had that mischievous grin and endless energy that made him a fan favorite in the early sound shorts. But life after the gang wasn't safe either. During World War II, at just 20, Bobby was training in a military plane when it crashed. He didn't survive. The kid who had tumbled, tripped, and gotten into so much on-screen trouble met a real-life tragedy far too early. And then there's Jackie Cooper. Jackie's story is different, but no less intense. He made the transition from child star to adult actor, living all the way to 88. But his childhood was far from easy. Behind the camera, the pressures were relentless. Directors pushed him to cry on cue. One of the cruelest tricks? They once threatened to kill his dog if he didn't break down for a scene. Imagine that. Imagine being a kid, having your emotions manipulated that way, all while everyone was cheering for the performance you were forced to give. Jackie survived, yes, but those scars stayed with him for life. It's sobering to realize just how many of these kids, adored on screen, carried heavy burdens in real life. Froggy, Weezer, and Jackie, each story a reminder that fame came with serious costs. And yet, their laughter, their courage, and their performances live on. And here's something truly new, something only recently revealed. In 2024 and 2025, the Hal Roach studio archives were digitized. Suddenly, long-lost recordings, private letters, and unseen footage came to light. Among these treasures were audio clips of the kids talking, laughing, and sometimes revealing their struggles. There were letters from Roach himself, expressing regret over the grueling work hours and the lack of protection for these child actors. It's raw, it's real, and it's powerful. The discovery changed the way we see the series. What had been labeled a curse suddenly became a story of influence and progress. The letters, the recordings, the candid reflections of the kids, all of it showed that these young performers, often exploited, had indirectly helped create modern protections for child actors. Today's SAG rules, the limits on working hours, mandatory on-set education, and safeguards against abuse came in part because of the experiences of the Our Gang kids. And there's more. The series highlighted racial progress at a time when the world was still deeply segregated. Black cast members like Farina, Steamy, and Buckwheat broke barriers, showing audiences that children of all races could play together as equals.
They don't care what race they are, they don't care how old they are, they don't care what their religion, they don't care anything like that. They play with each other. And this is what Hal Roach, in his vision that he saw kids doing just that.
That legacy ripples through today's media, inspiring more diverse storytelling for kids everywhere. What once seemed like just tragedy now also shines as quiet heroism. The laughter, the pranks, the silent tears weren't just entertainment. They were lessons, changes, and a spark that still burns in Hollywood today. So when we watch Our Gang now, we're not just laughing at the antics of Little Rascals, we're witnessing a history of courage, creativity, and trailblazing. These kids gave us joy, yes, but they also gave us a legacy that changed the way Hollywood treats children, and they paved the way for a more inclusive, aware, and protective industry. And then, we remember that behind every smile was a real kid, living a real life full of challenges and triumphs we're only beginning to fully understand. And that's the incredible, heartbreaking story of Our Gang's original kids, the Little Rascals who changed Hollywood forever. Their legacy lives on. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button. Subscribe for more shocking and emotional stories, And don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss an update. Yes.